Altria is one of the most notable high-paying dividend stocks of all time. Not only does the stock yield nearly 10%, but it also has dividend king status and has been able to give dividend investors some pretty amazing cash flow for the better part of a century. However, this long-standing company is facing issues like never before. The stock is down almost 12% year to date, wiping out any potential gains from the dividend this year. This drop was exemplified by poor Q3 earnings. That is why in this video, I will be discussing whether this stock is a buy for the high yield and cheap price, or if it will continue to falter heading into the future. Anyways, let us get right into it. Before we start this video, make sure to like and subscribe if you're new to the channel because I will be posting dividend stock videos just like this one every few days. Altria is a stock I've talked about a few times on this channel before, and that is really down to its spectacular dividend. However, it is probably worth talking about what Altria actually is before we get into any financial metrics. Altria is a company that primarily focuses on tobacco products. They own a few big name brands in the tobacco industry such as Marlboro, and they also own a few other smokeless tobacco brands that I will talk about later. Notably, Altria also owns roughly 10% of ABBV, which is famous for their many beer brands such as Corona, which is a good safety net for Altria stock that I do not see talked about that often. One thing about the Altria company that is super important to note though, and is a key point about why the stock has faltered so much, is that most of their tobacco brands they own exclusively within the United States instead of internationally. This does not apply to all their brands, but just for example, Marlboro, arguably their most important product currently, Philip Morris actually owns the rights to that brand outside of the US, not Altria. Long story short, Altria is primarily a tobacco company with ultra high margins and a strong brand portfolio within its respective sector. They also have a few investments in other industries such as smokeless tobacco and the alcohol industry, but is mainly just cigarettes. Now that I've given you a brief overview of the company here, let us just dive into some of the fundamental metrics. Altria is currently trading at just north of $40 a share, which is historically very low for the company. This has resulted in the company trading at a PE of around 8, which is hugely low when compared to brands like Philip Morris, which is a PE of over double that. As I mentioned earlier, the stock has tanked quite a bit this year, but it especially plunged after Q3 earnings for the stock, despite numbers that overall weren't too bad. The earnings report did hint at some other negative news though, which I will talk about later. Talking about the dividend really quickly, the stock has an ultra high dividend yield sitting at just under 10%. The stock also has dividend king status with over 50 years of consecutive payments and dividend increases, which has historically made the stock pretty fantastic. The growth of this dividend is low, with the 10 years sitting at 7.76%, but the most recent few hikes being more like 4%. The Altria board has also mentioned that they intend to keep raising this dividend by around 4% annually up until 2028. This doesn't mean that after 2028 the dividend will stop growing, but this is basically what they can promise for the time being. The way they are able to afford this high dividend is due to the fact that their business doesn't require that much cash to operate. Cigarette products are highly addictive and people are willing to pay a huge premium for their favorite brands, giving Altria a net profit margin of over 40%, which allows them to sustain this high dividend. So now let us get into what is behind the stock's slump. Not only is the stock down double digits just this year, but in the past few years, the stock has performed very poorly. The stock is down huge from its all-time highs, and this significant drop was mainly caused by Altria's investment into Juul. If you didn't know, Altria acquired 35% of Juul for over $12 billion, but this has almost completely been wiped out, with their current position not even being worth $300 million. This was due to the fact that some Juul products were banned by the FDA, basically turning their investment into a write-off. The stock drop this year, though, was because of the fact that people are turning away from brands like Marlboro in favor of cheaper cigarettes, which is something that became very apparent in Q3 earnings. If you weren't aware, smoking in the US has been steadily and pretty quickly decreasing every year, so to keep profits up, Altria has been inflating the price of their cigarette sticks. Although this can work, especially when your brands are top-notch, as we've seen with companies such as Coca-Cola, this can only go so far. Nowadays, Altria's brands are priced well above some of their competitors, and during tough financial times like this, people cannot afford these ridiculously high prices even for their favorite cigarettes. Of course, to counteract this, Altria can raise their revenue by raising their prices more, but this is clearly an unsustainable business practice. The other big issue, as I was just mentioning, is that cigarette sales in the United States just keep dropping. They've dropped consistently every year in recent history other than 2020 due to the pandemic. This isn't the same case throughout the world though, as some countries actually have increasing cigarette sales. This is why Altria has such a low PE when compared to Philip Morris. There is simply more growth to be had in the cigarette and tobacco industry outside of the United States, which has been hurting Altria over the years tremendously. Now that we've talked about the bad news, and hopefully you understand a bit bit about why the stock has dropped so much, let us quickly go over some of the good news. Altria, despite their issues, still has some things going for it. Firstly, the brands under Altria are still very strong. Altria's cigarette brands are still the leading ones in the US, and that is worth noting. The strong brands and revenue from them do allow this ultra high yield to be somewhat safe. In addition, their ultra low evaluation, which has occurred for many reasons, does genuinely put Altria at a great price right now. Lastly, going into the future, Altria isn't completely doomed. Altria recently acquired Enjoy, an electric cigarette brand, to try to look more into the future. This brand is way smaller than Juul was, but it is also better for two reasons. Firstly, this purchase was much cheaper than Juul. Instead of Altria paying over $10 billion in their Juul investment, Enjoy only cost under $3 billion. Altria also bought Enjoy out completely instead of a minority stake. This means that they have complete control over Enjoy, which is a good sign as they can do more of what they want. Enjoy has also already been approved by the FDA, which is another huge win for Altria and is the main reason they picked up this company. The FDA ban was the main reason their Juul stake went sour, so with Enjoy they can avoid this entirely. Altria is also growing their non-smoking segments such as on pouches, and these are slowly but surely growing within their respective market, taking up more and more market share. Although these brands are currently not contributing a lot to Altria's cash, Altria expects them to be adding to the bottom line in a noticeable way starting in 2025, so in 2 years' time we will know a lot more about this stock's future, either for the worse or for the better. It is hard to say where tobacco is going, but due to Altria's low evaluation, it's already priced in that tobacco will be going down a lot over the next few years, so if Altria is able to reverse this with some of their other brands, this would be fantastic for the company. Anyways guys, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're new to my channel. I'm currently trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I think Altria is definitely an interesting stock right now, but the issues plaguing its future are definitely worrying for me personally. If you agree with my analysis, let me know down below, but also comment down below any of your other opinions. I will see you on the next video. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.